It's time that South Africa starts becoming a serious country. Right? Not a place that has a court jester like Fikile Mbalula, who gets to talk about things yet he's never faced an election in his life. For those of you that don't know, Fikile Mbalula is the diminutive ANC Secretary General. He's like the CEO of the ANC, and for some reason, he's got we've known him because he's been around politics forever. He's got a big mouth, and he clearly doesn't understand the way the world works. So his latest trick is to dare the US to put sanctions on our corrupt leaders. He says that if they do that, they will be subverting democracy in South Africa. And because there is this thing that's been passed in the US by Senator Ronnie Jackson, who's a bit of a MAGA supporter, and he's really picked up the anti-South African baton and run with it hard in America. And he has proposed that America really toughen their stance against South Africa. Why? Because South Africa is supporting America's enemies. That's Ronnie Jackson's big play. And he is proposing sanctions on some of the people who in South Africa seem to get away with any crime that they like. So enter our court jester, Fikile Mbalula, that says, yes, go ahead, make my day, as if we are going to threaten the US. But the important thing to understand out of this is not that Fikile Mbalula is a clown, but the important thing is that he's using the same playbook that was used in Zimbabwe. For those that don't know, when Zimbabwe promoted the expropriation of farms and crashed their own economy, sanctions weren't put on the country of Zimbabwe. They were put on the leadership of Zimbabwe, just to try and get them to stop being so bad at leading their country. This is in the Robert Mugabe days. And they said, if you do certain things, we will release those sanctions on the leaders. This is on the people themselves, right? The leaders themselves. These were people that had given the commands to do X, Y, and Z. In South Africa, what Ronnie Jackson and his bill has proposed is that we know, because it's in the public domain, certain people in the leadership who have either been corrupt or they have promoted what he terms as anti-American legislation. And he says that the US should put sanctions on those people. So what does the sanctions look like? Well, there's a thing called the Magnitsky Act in America, and this is named after a Russian who got killed by the KGB. And basically what the act says is that if you do a crime and your money ends up in US dollars, that the US can prosecute you if you're in a country that, and if they can get their hands on you. So basically any country that's allied with America should pass you over to America, and then you should face trial in America because you committed fraud in US dollars. So if I steal public money, it's the equivalent of $10 million. I get it in rands, I turn it into dollars, and I go and I put it in a country that America trades with. That country should hand over the money to the US because it's done in dollars, and arrest the person who did the crime if they get their hands on them. What happened, this law, as I said, was passed for Russian oligarchs that were breaking the law and then going around, buying penthouses in London and Paris and New York, big ships, big boats, and football teams. And really, the idea was to say, you can't steal from your people, make your country worse, and then you live the life. The idea was that you get this person, you say, if you want to steal money, that's great, but you better stay in the country in which you stole it, because if you take one step out of there to one of those nice places that you like to go to, if you want to go skiing in Aspen, Colorado, we're going to arrest you. If you're going to go skiing in the Alps in Europe, we're going to arrest you. And we're going to take your money away if it's in a bank, a Swiss bank account or whatever the equivalent is, a bank that the Americans can reach. So it makes you a global persona non grata. So you end up In the case of Zimbabwe, where they've stolen all the money, those leaders can't travel outside of Zimbabwe other than to other failed states. So yes, they can come to South Africa. Yes, they can go to Venezuela and Cuba, but they can't go to the hotspots, because there was a terrible time when leaders would, especially in Africa, would loot their country and then go buy a villa in France from, those leaders from Francophone Africa. The US is threatening to do the same with our leaders. But like I said, what Fikile Mbalula is using the same Zim playbook. And that playbook was to say that to try and get the population to think that the sanctions were against the country. And in many ways, Zim did it really well, but they've got control of the media. What they said was, the reason Zimbabwe is in such a mess is because of these sanctions. What they failed to say is that the sanctions weren't against the country. The sanctions were against the individuals who were stealing money. But they tried to make Zimbabweans, and they succeeded, think that it was those sanctions against their leaders that was causing their misery, and not the leaders themselves. Now, in South Africa, we must not be fooled. If the Jackson bill gets passed in the US and becomes law and we end up sanctioned, our leaders end up being sanctioned, it's not the country being sanctioned, it's the leaders being sanctioned. You're going to hear a lot more from blowhards like Fikile Mbalula, Gwede Mantashe, saying that the US is trying to meddle in our politics. No, all they're doing is they're going to say, you can do whatever you like, but come near our jurisdiction, we're going to put you in jail. Put your money into dollars and you've committed a crime against the US government. And as a South African that's so sick of our money being stolen, I would welcome it. I don't see it as meddling at all. It's time that countries like the US and other countries said, you can do crime, but don't use our currency and don't come holidaying here because we'll take action, even if your government won't take action. So I don't think that Donald Trump or any American in government is losing sleep over Fikile Mbalula's warnings. But for South Africa, it's a very interesting development because we do know that our comrades love to go on international holidays. Could be funny if they have the only holidays they can go to are their pals in Venezuela and Cuba. That'll be interesting to see. So thank you for joining us on The Political Insider. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.